Hi, everybody, and welcome to today's Introduction to Crowdfunding for Sport webinar. We're just letting a few more people join the room. So there's a few of you signed up today, so it'd be great to allow as many as possible into the room for the start. My name is Zoe, and I'm part of the team here at Crowdfunder. And the purpose of today's session is to talk you through the basics of crowdfunding and how that can be of benefit to your sports club or organisation. We're also being joined by Rebecca from Sport England, and she's going to talk you through the additional funds, the extra funding that can be available to you for your sports organisation through the process of crowdfunding. We've also been joined as well by a really successful project owner. So Fiona's here from Birkhead's CIC to actually talk to us about her most recent crowdfunding campaign, and that was crowdfunding for additions to a skate park. So a really exciting project, and I hope you will get a chance to take a look at it. So I'll put some links to the project in there as well. Just a few housekeeping points before we get started. We have allowed 30 minutes for this session. It might take a little bit longer. It just depends on the questions that we have coming through from you guys. So you have the ability to ask questions throughout the course of the session. There's a chat box on your right hand of your screen, and you can just pop any questions about crowdfunding or the funds themselves, or of course any questions for Fiona as well about her experience into that chat box, and we'll get through as many of those as we can towards the end of the session. I should mention as well that some of us are working from home, so there could be some unexpected interruptions. I know Rebecca has just been waiting for a delivery. Hopefully that's arrived, and I have 2 children on Easter holiday break. So let's hope that there are no unexpected interruptions. Children have been plied with snacks and given strict instructions to not interrupt. So let's see how well we go. There might be internet issues as well. So if you find that it starts freezing or your internet drops out, then please just press the refresh button in your browser and you should come straight back into the live room. Right, so without further ado, as I say, we've got half an hour for this session, so let's get underway. If we could please bring Rebecca into the live room and talk through the funds that are available from Sport England. So hi, Rebecca.
Hi, Zoe. Thanks for that. Yeah, I was a bit touch and go there because I went for a fridge delivery, but we're fine.
It's always the way. It's live, so you never know what's going to happen. So there's currently 2 funds available, isn't there, from Sport England as part of our extra funding partnerships. Would you be able to talk through both of those, please?
Yeah, of course. And thanks to everyone who's kind of joined the session today. I really appreciate everyone kind of giving up their time, and hopefully you can kind of get much out of this as possible. We really, here at Sport England, we really appreciate that this is quite a novel approach to fundraising and just kind of grant funding for sports organisations. So a huge part of our partnership with Crowdfunder is to kind of offer up this wraparound support, whether it be the webinar today, kind of all the online tools Crowdfunder are so great at providing and supporting you with. So hopefully kind of make the very most of it and kind of really kind of make use of the questions at the end as well. So yes, at the minute we've got 2 live funds that we have available through our partnership with Crowdfunder. Our initial fund is Active Together, which we launched back in May 2020 now. It's a 7.5 million lottery fund, and it's designed to help support kind of community sports clubs and organisations recover from the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic. And as we know, we're kind of coming out of that now, but also so it's about recovery, reinvention, building resilience for clubs. So ultimately, where we kind of first started, it was all about kind of replacing that loss of funding. But now we kind of appreciate and anticipate that clubs are obviously now kind of recovering from that period, but also still kind of at times operating at a loss. So that the projects might involve kind of fundraising for essential maintenance works that you need to take place, which you ordinarily might have been able to cover yourselves, pay for adjustment needs to accommodate kind of social distancing measures, running new activity, which actually may have come out of a demand within kind of the lockdown periods, which we've actually seen quite a lot of, unforeseen events, continuing to impact your finances, and kind of the emergency energy crisis as well, which obviously it's a demanding kind of climate at the minute for everybody. So the fund itself has been incredibly successful to date. We've supported over 550 successful campaigns so far, covering a whole host of kind of sports, from kind of sub-aqua to rugby, cricket, trampolining. So it really is, if you're not sure about potentially going for it, we've got plenty of kind of great examples to refer you to and kind of gain inspiration from. And then we've got our Place and Spaces Fund, which is now a total budget, as of this week, total budget of 7 million lottery funding. This fund is capital funding aimed at kind of community and sport and physical activity groups looking to create, enhance or redevelop their sports facility to the benefit of their wider community. So as you can see, you've got the United by logo on there. So a key focus of this fund in particular is the Commonwealth Games, because obviously we're hosting them in Birmingham this year, and we really want to celebrate that. So we're looking for campaigns that are looking to help unite those communities as part of this fund. So kind of to really kind of represent that within their campaign pages, creating, enhancing facilities that people get to use and allow them to become more physically active. So yeah, as our funding is funded by National Lottery and Ticket Sales, both funds are open to not-for-profit organisations, which is all really clear on both the home pages. So yeah, as I said, make real use of these sessions. Zoe's great, and kind of we've also got a kind of a previous successful project later on, so really kind of gain kind of any insight you can from their lived experience. So yeah, over to you, Zoe.
Amazing, thank you. And it is really exciting. Sports do crowdfund incredibly well, don't they? Like it's proven from working with you guys over the last couple of years just how successful actually accessing these extra funds can be through this process. I think it's brilliant.
As I said, there's a whole host of sports that we've funded now, and we haven't got one specific kind of exemplar kind of what project works best per se. That we've got a whole range of things that people are looking to crowdfund for. So anything and everything.
It's very exciting. And you can see on the slide here, guys, as well, that so the money available is up to £10,000 per project, and that's a maximum of £10,000 towards your target, and that is up to 50% of your initial target. So we'll go through what I mean by initial target a little bit later when we talk about crowdfunding, but so that's potentially up to £10,000 towards your project, which is huge money and can make a real difference. I've shared a couple of links for both of those funds into the chat box, so you can have a look at the eligibility criteria and things. I'm also just going to share a link to the extra funding page in general, because what we're finding quite a lot at the moment, especially with those that have been supported by Sport England, is that actually they are eligible for other funds as well, whether that might be from your local authority or for the National Emergencies Trust, for example, which again is kind of in response to organisations, not-for-profits, having a bit of a hurdle with fundraising over the last couple of years. So that's in response again to COVID, but it doesn't have to be, as Rebecca was saying. Now we're looking at the long-term effects of those kind of issues that clubs have faced because of the COVID pandemic and because of the lack of funds and lack of face-to-face fundraising and all those kind of things. So take a look at those national and regional funds as well, because we do have many sports organisations that have received multiple pots of funding, and it does make a huge difference to being able to see your project come to fruition. I'm just going to have a little look now. Rebecca, you're more than welcome to stay on if you want to have any input on this slide. I'm just going to talk about the milestones involved in the funding. So the way in which it works is you would still need to crowdfund. The whole idea is that you're going through the process of crowdfunding, you're reaching out to your community, and you are engaging with those around you to help raise the shortfall of funds. So in an ideal scenario, you've created a crowdfunding page and campaign, you've been approved for that extra funding from Sport England, and now you launch your crowdfunder and you start crowdfunding. You have an initial milestone to hit, and that will be dependent on your initial target. So if your target is up to £5,000, you would need to engage with 25 supporters and have 25 unique supporters back your project, and also reach 25% of your target to release that funding pledge to your page. When we talk about unique supporters, and you can have a little look in the table here, it does vary depending on what your target amount is. So it says here required supporters. We often refer to that as unique supporters, and that is somebody who has a individual email address and banking footprint. So for example, if somebody was to make multiple pledges to your campaign, they would be counted as one unique supporter. If there were a couple that shared a joint bank account, for example, that would be classed as one supporter because they share the same banking footprint. So when it comes to those unique supporters, you just need to make sure that you are really getting the message across that it needs to be individual emails and individual banking footprints. So once you've secured those levels of supporters for your project and they're all donating and they're helping you to raise 25% of your initial target, the extra funding pledge from Sport England will land on your page. That will go towards your target and they will become one of your supporters. You'll be able to see them in your supporter tab. You then continue to crowdfund until you have reached your 100% of your initial target. Now your extra funding pledge and all of the money that you've raised has been secured. You can, of course, continue to raise money from the crowd. If you have still got a period of time where your crowdfunder is live, there is nothing to stop you to keep raising money from the crowd. And that's something called a stretch target. So it allows you to overfund your project. But ultimately, the thing to remember is you need to raise 100% of your target to secure the extra funding from Sport England. If you don't reach 100% of your target, that will be returned to Sport England. So we want to work with you, and so does Sport England, to make sure that you achieve that target. So there's lots of support out there, as Rebecca mentioned, not only from ourselves at Crowdfunder, but from Sport England themselves. We all want to see you succeed. So making use of the resources that are available to you is really key. Just before we actually talk to Fiona, I think what would be a brilliant thing to do now is if we actually have a little look at crowdfunding itself. Some of you might be new to the whole concept of crowdfunding. So let's have a little look at this and see, hopefully this will give you real basic information, but also give you the confidence to know how to start putting that crowdfunding campaign together.
Hello, everyone. So how does crowdfunding work? And what is it? Well, crowdfunding is a great way to raise money and awareness for your organisation by engaging with your community. What you're going to do is create a crowdfunding page on our online platform. And don't worry if you're not too tech savvy, it's very easy to use, very user friendly. You're going to create a page that looks something like this one on the right hand side. And then you're going to promote that campaign to your crowd and your community, and they'll then make pledges and donations on your page, and that's how you get funded. So it's really important to make an engaging page. It needs to target the whole community. So try not to fall into that trap of just writing something that's geared towards your club members, because they're most likely going to be engaging with you already. So you really want to reaching out to the wider audience, potentially people who aren't already connected to your sport or your club, and really make the most of crowdfunding and create that awareness of your organisation. So when you're creating your page, what we always recommend is start with some key headlines and organise the content into a very readable order. So if you start with the headline of who you are and outline who you are as a club, your impact in the community, and why you're crowdfunding. So for a lot of you, it will still be the effects of that COVID has had on your organisation, but equally some people are now starting to get over that, and it may be a completely different type of project. So it's important that you just explain what you're actually crowdfunding for, and also how you plan to spend the money. So as a potential supporter, you would be much more likely to pledge or donate to a campaign if you can see the direct impact that your financial contribution will make. Once you have all that information collated, it's time to make your page just look more engaging and more appealing. And the best way to do that is with images and videos. So you can add images in between to the page, in between the text, to break up those blocks of text that you should have. And it also helps to summarise and reflect the key elements of your campaign and show the personality of your club. So what also helps with that, as well as images, is a short video. So 1 to 2 minutes is absolutely plenty. You just want to grab the audience's attention and tell them in a nutshell what your project is all about. And it gives that opportunity to actually connect and engage with the viewers of your page. So it's really important to make sure that you're happy with your page before you go live, but also before applying for the extra funding. So whenever you apply for your extra funding, which you'll do via your project dashboard, the relevant sports organisation will review your page and give you some feedback potentially, and just make sure your page has got everything on it that it needs to be a successful campaign, and before deciding whether to give you a pledge for extra funding or not. Now, Crowdfunder is the UK's top rewards-based crowdfunding platform, as opposed to just purely donations only. So, and really, it's on top of the standard donation that you'd perhaps obviously associate with traditional fundraising. You add these rewards to take your campaign to the next level. So rewards tend to encourage larger and more pledges and enable you to attract pledges from outside your network. So you want to get really inventive and creative with your rewards as much as you can. So try to offer a range of rewards targeted at different audiences. So your members might be tempted by, say, a one-to-one coaching session, or you could offer sponsorship or advertising space to large donors. And then you want to think about those in the wider community who don't necessarily have a connection with your club already, but you want to think about how you can get them to pledge. So what you can do is speak with local businesses who may want to support your campaign. Rather than a financial contribution, or in some cases as well as, they can offer products or services to use as rewards. And offering these at a slight discount means that anyone in the area will be keen to make a pledge to grab themselves a bargain, an exclusive offer. So on the page here, you can see we've got some great examples of rewards that we've seen, such as on the right-hand side there, we've got 2 hours of conversational Greek lessons. In the middle at the bottom, we've got a fish and chips voucher. And then up at the top left, we've got Power Auto's MOT voucher. So you can see there's a bit of things that are totally unrelated to sport, but that is making it appealing much to a much wider audience. Now, another great thing that you can do with a sports crowdfunding campaign is to use our multiplier feature. It's really effective for sports clubs. It allows people to essentially fundraise on behalf of your project. So perhaps you might have some individuals that want to do something special to raise funds for the club, like a sponsored swim or run a marathon. Or perhaps you have different teams or squads within your club who fancy a bit of competition to see who can raise the most or cycle the furthest or run the furthest. It's a great way to get more people involved in promoting the campaign and tapping into their personal networks, so reaching an even wider audience, and it can add a great competitive element to a campaign too. So you can see this example on the screen now was run by Spencer Lacrosse Club in 2021, and they had 44 fundraisers, so 44 individuals, each with their own fundraising page, and all the money that they raise via there feeds into the main project page. So it's a really great way to get people truly engaged with your fundraising efforts. So crowdfunding works and sports go really hand in hand very well. Sports crowdfund really well. So you can see here there's a selection of different types of projects, and that's just a very small handful. So they range from speed skating to swimming to gymnastics. Sports clubs are often at the heart of the community, and by definition you have a group of potentially competitive people who directly benefit from the project. So whatever sport it might be, it crowdfunds really well, and you really want to have that common goal in mind, and all crowdfund together. One of the next steps you can take, the most important steps, is to use our online learning facility. So we've got a free online course specifically geared for crowdfunding sports clubs, and that will give you even more detail about behind the basics that I've just gone over now, telling you how to create the perfect page. There's lots of tips on how to actually run your crowdfunder and pull it together. So definitely go on and do that online learning course after this webinar, and then go on to help create your perfect page and apply for the funding. So best of luck to you all.
Brilliant. Well, hopefully all of you have had a bit of a whistle-stop tour of crowdfunding. You might not be familiar. Let me just see if I can move myself over a bit. Just give me 2 seconds. No, it doesn't want to have it. So you might not be familiar with the process of crowdfunding. Essentially, I liken it to how you probably would have held things like raffles and offline events in order to raise money. The same principle applies. You're trying to connect with as many members of your community as you can. If you think of those rewards as things that you might have normally sourced from local businesses and members of your network and your community that they might gift you to add into your raffle, for example, that you're doing at your race night, instead of having an offline raffle, what you would do is you would put those on as rewards at a certain price point. So it's just transferring some of those skills that you might already have as a club, as an organisation, into how you might have traditionally fundraised into an online platform, and it does work incredibly well. One thing that is new as well to sports and to crowdfunding is that we've actually updated our APF. So what happens now, I'm just going to pop it onto this slide so that it's not just my big face. When you sign up your sports organisation through the sports section of the Crowdfunder website, you actually now have a really amazing template to help you put your page together. So you'll be prompted to put in your headings, you'll be prompted to add your text in certain areas, and you'll be prompted to add an image or a video. So it really does support you in a very user-friendly way on how to create that engaging page. We found it's made a huge difference. It launched a few weeks ago, and it's already making a big difference in the way in which people are formatting their pages, which is great news. The other thing just to touch upon very briefly is the update function. That is something that we find works really well when people are crowdfunding to help keep their supporters in the loop. So it's a way that you can actually post an update to your page, a bit like you would do on social media. There's a certain function you can opt to essentially write a piece of text, a thank you, celebrate a milestone or something that might have happened outside of the crowdfunder. You can add images and videos to this section as well. It will also be automatically emailed to your supporters that have opted in to keep in contact with you throughout the course of the campaign. So it's a great way of rallying your existing supporters, your existing network that have supported you, to get them behind the crowdfunder. It also helps people viewing your page to see what's been going on throughout the course of the campaign as well. So always use those update functions in order to engage and continue engaging with your supporters. Okay, well, I think the best thing to do, which always works really well, is to hear from somebody who has been there and done that and done it successfully. So Fiona, are you there, please? Hello. Oh,
Can you hear me okay?
We can hear you. Thank you for sitting in the wings.
That's all right.
Half an hour.
Thank you for having me. Thanks so much to you and to Rebecca.
No worries at all. We're very, very happy to have you here. So you guys, it was a kind of a group effort. Is that right in me saying? You kind of had 2 CICs essentially that had this dream to make this project happen. And I'm sure you absolutely spearheaded the whole thing. So you're going to have all of the knowledge, but just let people, they can see obviously on the slide here. So it was only really recently, actually,
yes,
wasn't it?
Yeah, very recently. We're still sending reward out to people, so yeah.
Amazing. So it's very fresh in your mind, and obviously if people want to go and have a look at that project, it's something that they can really take inspiration from because it is so new. But you successfully raised just over £15,000 from 132 supporters, which is great supporter numbers, a brilliant amount of money to hopefully help you make your project happen, and only 49 days, which is quite a short amount of time, really, isn't it, to raise that amount of money. So would you mind explaining a little bit more about your project?
Sure, yeah, of course. So yeah, you're right. We're 2 small kicks. So that's a social enterprise. Birkheads Wild is all about helping disadvantaged young people to experience the outdoors. And one of the things we do is run an outdoor youth club that the young people are in charge of. They decide what they want to do. They can do whatever they want as long as it's outdoors. And a couple of years ago now, they said, can we have a skate ramp? Which for a number of reasons wouldn't have worked on our 2-acre wild campsite. But we got in touch with the council, and they were really helpful in kind of pointing us to a park that they wanted to invest in. But most crucially, linking us up with Shred the North, which is a skateboarding social enterprise. So Dave from Shred the North has the skateboarding knowledge, and we had the young people's enthusiasm. So the whole idea came from our young people to start off with. And they were at the front and centre for the whole campaign, which I think really helped us, which I can touch on in a bit more detail. So we decided that we were going to come together and try to get a skate park in our local park.
Amazing. And yeah, kids can be pretty persistent, can't they, when they want something to happen? They're going to be your advocates, you know, talking to everyone around them that they want to make this thing happen. So that's really exciting. Why did you decide to crowdfund as your kind of source of you know, raising funds for this?
Yeah, well, I'd had a tiny bit of crowdfunder experience before. We'd done 2 very little, like £1,000 crowdfunders, more just as a vehicle of kind of raising sponsorship for an event that we did, and then after we've had a break in, so I knew a little bit about the platform and thought it had worked well, but we thought this was a bigger project, and so we had kind of double the crowd. So we had the Birkhead's Wild supporters plus the Shred the North and the whole of the skateboarding community. So we thought it probably lent itself well. And then, to be quite honest, when we started to look into it and realised that there was the potential for match funding, so the idea of raising £7,500 from our crowd was terrifying. But when we coupled with the chance of doubling that with the Sport England support, it was like, okay, we can do this, we can do this. So yeah. I think the match funding made it worth that risk, and made us think, right, we definitely have to do this.
It can be such a great motivator, can't it, as well? And it gives you that message to go back out to your crowd and say, look, you know, if you get behind us, we're going to potentially secure this money from, you know, this partner organisation, this, you know, Sport England or whatever it might be, that the local authority might get on board as well. So it's huge motivator for your crowd.
Yeah, and we did that throughout. We used that message repeatedly with the social media. So once everyone knows, you know, if they're given £1 that's doubled, then that's a really big motivator for people putting their hands in their pocket.
Definitely. And I think touched upon it in the video that we watched as well, but just making sure the timing of application. So if people are putting in their applications while they're still in a temp stage, they haven't gone live, if they're approved at that stage, it means they've already got that message in place for the launch of their crowdfunder, which again can really help keep that momentum throughout the whole course and give you that content going forward. What did you find, if anything, was the most difficult about crowdfunding?
Yeah, I made some notes before I came on this call, and I've written pace and timing. So I think the timing of the overall project is something to bear in mind. So knowing when to kind of do the crowdfunder in the lifespan of our overall project, particularly when we're working with a third partner, which is the council, working on a totally different scale and a totally different pace to us. So it's choosing that right moment of, right, do we press go now and try and get this money now, or do we need to wait until a different stage of the project? But once we knew we had the council on board and they liked the idea, we thought, well, it's a better way to, you know, get the money behind us first and then go for it. So that was a big thing. The other thing was about the time in terms of what we spent on it. We're both really small organisations. I'm the only paid member of staff at Birkhead's Wild, and Dave from Shred the North has another job that he does full time and kind of does this in his spare time. So it's just making time for it, because we set 7 or 8 weeks. That 49 days doesn't seem like long at all, but to see that those weeks stretching out ahead was a little bit scary. And knowing that we had to put a little bit of time in every day, whether that was social media or talking to somebody behind the scenes about whether they've got something that they can pledge. Just that knowledge that for 8 weeks we needed to focus our time on this was quite hard in a small organisation. But I think the flip side of that was that it gave us the focus time to fundraise.
Yeah, that is really important. It's something that we do try and emphasize as well to project owners is, in an ideal scenario, you would have kind of a team of people that can dedicate time towards it. And I appreciate that obviously that's not always possible, is it? Especially if people have got full-time jobs or running CICs or wherever it might be. So a good thing for those that are here today would be to make sure you're putting in essentially we say kind of equal time planning to running. So it might be that you need kind of 4 weeks of planning and 4 to 5 weeks of running, and just make sure that when you are running that live campaign, that as much as possible you have stuff in place. So you've got a plan of activity, because it's hard, isn't it? I think going through that live crowdfunder and just constantly reacting to stuff. But like you say, you need to know that you're going to need to be posting on social media each day, pretty much. You're going to need to be reaching out. So that comes into that really key planning stage. You might want to have a backlog of images, for example, that you can use as your social media content and things like that. So just planning is key, and hopefully it will make the live part of the crowdfunder a little bit easier to be able to keep that momentum up. But yeah, it is definitely an undertaking. So do make sure that you've got kind of time to put towards it. What worked best for you guys?
Well, just building on what you've just said in the terms of the planning, and I guess it's the wonders of technology. So I think we spent, like, overall, it took us about 3 or 4 weeks to get our page designed and up and live. But the magic of technology was that as soon as we'd got something drafted, and I think I just went on and put the bare bones in, you know, like title goes here, and put some photos in, we got a message from Crowdfunder, which was lovely, to say, do you need any help? Can you know, we can see that you're doing this. Here's amazing stuff. Here's some links to look at of other similar projects. So a couple of links to other skate park related projects came through, or others that have been successful. So that was great, feeling like somebody had our back, and feeling like the Crowdfunder were interested and had actually seen what we were doing and were interested. So that helped give us momentum. I think the next thing is having the young people involved. And I appreciate that's not going to be the same for everybody, but I think probably a lot of people who are going to do a crowdfunder with this particular slant will be working with young people. So we had our young people at the front and the centre and behind the scenes. So they did artwork. They were interviewed for the video. They were interviewed on BBC Radio Newcastle. You know, their story, nobody really wants to hear from me and Dave. Having the young people talking made a massive difference, a huge positive difference. So I would say put the young people or, you know, the end users of whatever your project's going to be at the front and centre of everything that you do, even if you are squirreling away behind the scenes loads. I think hearing from them is really powerful. I think the other thing that worked well was just the fact that we had this collective focus for a crowdfunder. So we had that 7 or 8 weeks that, yes, was terrifying, but it meant we galvanized additional support. So, for example, one of the young people's parents went to their workplace and managed to get a match funding of £500 from their workplace supportive scheme through their charitable trust. So if we hadn't had the crowdfunder, we would have never had that. It was the fact that the crowdfunder was there with the match funding there. It meant that other things came in that we just wouldn't have got otherwise. So having that focus really made a difference, I think, for the fundraising.
That's amazing to hear. And it's something I think that people, because it can be quite daunting doing the crowdfunder itself. And what is exciting is actually the avenues it can open up beyond the initial crowdfunder. And this goes for kind of organizations going forward as well. Once you've created this page and you've created this campaign, you've got advocates, you've got messages of support, you've got, you know, community members getting behind you, so that actually if you decide you want to apply for additional grant funding in the future, you've almost got a portfolio of what you've achieved so far. You can say, this matters, we've crowdfunded, look at what we did. It also means that you've got access to those supporters going forward. You've got people who are behind you, so you can keep, I mentioned updates, you can keep posting updates to your page after the crowdfunder has closed. So for you guys, you might want to post an update when the building work starts on the skate ramp, for example. You might want to post an update for the grand opening and go, we did it, guys, look, here's some pictures. You know, it keeps those supporters in the loop, and it keeps that awareness about you guys and the projects and the CICs. So I think it can be a really resourceful tool that can have lots of added benefits. not just the financial raise, but as you say, you know, without the crowdfunder, you might not have even known that that would have been an option from that particular organisation as well. You guys had a lovely selection of rewards, and you did mention about kind of, you know, squirreling away behind the scenes, going and sourcing those. How did you go about that? Was it just kind of contacting local businesses, or, you know, parents of the young children involved with the CICs? How did you source those rewards?
Yeah, we did do a call out on social media saying if anyone's got rewards, you know, explaining what we were doing and asking for rewards. But we started with ourselves, actually. So with the 2 kicks, saying, what can we offer that's kind of, that we're only giving our time up, but it has a value attached to it. So I think you mentioned this in your presentation, like one-to-one coaching sessions. We got those from Shred the North and from another skateboard coach to put in, and they got snapped up straight away. And, you know, we've got a 2-acre wild campsite, so we offered, you know, the high end of the rewards, a free children's party there and a free overnight camp. So it was things that, yes, they have a cost in terms of time, but actually we weren't spending money on, and they were like high value rewards and popular rewards. So that was definitely a good place to start. We asked our like current supporters and other projects that we've worked with, so we kept it local. So at one point we were thinking, oh, should we do a ring round of local businesses? But I think due to time, we just stayed with like other funders. So we have some money from our local co-op. We're a co-op local cause. So I just went to them and said, could you give us like a little hamper or something? So it was, again, something that wasn't high value to them, but it was kind of an easier ask than cold calling. So we didn't end up, you know, just ringing all our local businesses and explaining it all. We went to people who knew us already and who'd been involved in our projects in some way or another, and found that that was a much easier ask. And actually they were delighted to be asked, you know, they were really delighted to kind of keep that going. So yeah, that's how we approached it. But I imagine there might be some other people who think, right, I'm gonna, you know, ring all the local businesses around here, but we just made that decision due to time, really.
Yeah, and it is, you know, if somebody's already got an interest in you guys, if it's somebody that you've already got a partnership with or collaborating with, and that will be the same for a lot of the sports organisations. It might even, you know, suppliers that deliver the chips to the canteen or whatever it might be, you know, you can reach out to them and say, this is what we're doing, and they just might have somebody within their team that has a hidden talent, or there's a service or experience that they can actually gift you. And like you say, anything that you're putting up as a reward, ideally you don't want that to be of a financial cost to you. If it is, that can be factored into the reward price. You know, we do have businesses that crowdfund, for example, and it might be that they are putting up a product, for example, and they're factoring in the cost of creating that product in the reward price. So that's an option as well. But for you guys, it was time, wasn't it?
Yeah, and we did actually, once our crowdfunder was live, we got more offers of rewards. So just by the very fact that it was up there, some really unexpected but great things came through. So we were able to then add on new rewards, which then meant we could do another post saying there's new rewards, go and have a look. Yeah. So it was kind of like a virtuous circle, I guess.
Brilliant. That's really exciting. And that is, again, something we kind of ask people if they have the capacity to do, is to drip feed rewards throughout the campaign, because it just keeps that interest level. It keeps people coming back and visiting the page, rather than just the message of we're crowdfunding kind of over and over can be quite tiresome. So you need to give people a reason to keep kind of coming back and having a look at what's going on. And you guys did an incredible job of that. Just quickly, I'm just conscious of time. Do you have any kind of golden piece of advice that you might give people here today that are thinking of crowdfunding? Yeah,
a couple of things. So I think number one, look at other similar projects on Crowdfunder, and I call it R&D, rip off and duplicate. So I looked at similar ones that have been successful and just kind of copied and pasted some words that I could change, because it does seem quite daunting when you first go on to build your page and think, oh God, I've got to fill all this with something coherent. So definitely look at other similar projects, and I think Crowdfunder will help you with that anyway. Your phone is your friend. So we did get advice from Crowdfunder when we'd initially drafted it. We didn't have a video on there, and they said, you know, it'd be much more likely to be successful if you had a video. And our video we did in 2 hours on a Saturday afternoon on my phone with a piece of editing software that I'd just downloaded, with the young people involved. So I think you can do so much from your phone now. So don't be daunted. If you haven't got a video, you can put that together really easily. And this is coming from somebody who is not tech savvy, definitely not. And then just stay really close to it. I've put stay close in my notes. So to scare myself a little bit, sorry, there's just a little bit of child noise in the background here. To scare myself a little bit, Dave and I were chatting about what our daily target should be. So we were going in, looking at what we had and saying, right, we've got £230 that we need to raise every single day. What we're going to do to get that today, what we're going to do to get that tomorrow. And, you know, that would fluctuate slightly depending on kind of what was coming in. And I think it's probably natural, but ours took a dip in the centre, and it was just like holding our nerve then, that we knew when we hit the threshold of the Sport England funding kicking in, that gave it a big boost, because then suddenly people could see we were nearly there. So just stay really close to your crowdfunder and be prepared to do that for the however many weeks you run it for. It will cost you a little bit of sleep at night, but it'll be worth it in the end.
You've hit some really key points there. You're right. We describe crowdfunders as having a U shape. So as you start, it's all really exciting. Everyone's behind you, and then it drops off, goes to the bottom of a U, and there's a bit of a lull, and then it all creeps back up again towards the end because people want to see you succeed. That's why we do advise not having really long crowdfunders, because what that can do is just to increase that lull at the bottom of the U. It doesn't necessarily equate to more pledges, because that momentum kind of drops off. It's hard to maintain, you know, throughout that whole time. But you, that is some brilliant advice, you know, breaking down your target into what do we need to hit a day, not this big kind of mountain that we need to climb. Because actually, if you, and even breaking down that first milestone, how do we hit 25% to release that pledge? What is that every day for the next few weeks whilst we're at the height of this U, and we've just launched? I think that is a great takeaway piece of advice for everyone here, because if you can do that and release the pledge, then the rest is riding on that momentum, isn't it, to get you over the line? So I think that's a brilliant piece of advice. I'm conscious that I know you've got somewhere else you need to be at the moment, haven't you?
I'm happy. It's fine. I'm happy to
take
right. questions.
Okay. Well, we've had a few coming through, so I'm going to just invite Rebecca back as well now and see if we can just go through some of these questions that have come through for everybody. Okay, so first of all, we've got one from Gary, which is the places and spaces just for clubs in the West Midlands? We've got some exciting news about that, haven't we?
Yeah, it's not. It's available nationally now. Initially kicked off with a priority in those West Midlands areas, obviously where it's being hosted at Birmingham-wise. But now, obviously, it's kind of a nationwide event, isn't it? So we want to kind of celebrate that focus as well. So it's open to anybody in the whole of England.
Okay, perfect. And then we've got one here from Mark. Are you allowed to set up a crowdfunder page more than once? If you're looking to raise £75,000, say, and you manage 30,000, will you lose all of that 30,000? It makes sense to lower your target and then yes. So essentially, you can run multiple crowdfunders. One thing to bear in mind, though, when it comes to extra funding is if you've already applied for extra funding for the same project, you wouldn't necessarily receive additional extra funding for the same project. However, you can run multiple crowdfunders to facilitate different phases of a project. Absolutely. We see that quite often. Again, with sports, it might be that they have quite a big redevelopment to do, or we've had one community group that were actually taking over a church and converting it into a gym and a wellness centre. So they actually crowdfunded multiple times for different phases of that kind of conversion. But that would be right, wouldn't it, Rebecca, that you wouldn't necessarily be able to receive extra funding multiple times for the same project? Or would it depend on the phase?
It depends on the phase. And we have had organisations come back in at the beginning, because obviously I think the main thing to remember, I think, as you touched on previously, Zoe, is just kind of you may be at risk of crowd fatigue. So just keep that in mind. Ultimately, we have had quite a few now projects raise above and beyond 75,000. So it definitely is possible, although I can understand if it does feel, as you say, quite daunting if that is your first crowdfunding campaign. But it's certainly possible to do it all in the one go. I think if you're coming back in a short period of time, we might not necessarily double fund the exact same project. We might need to see a slight difference. And as you say, kind of just keep in mind the crowd fatigue as well, whether you just want to kind of maintain momentum and do it in one big hit.
I guess the other thing that might be worth you doing as well is before launching or before kind of setting up the page, just take a look at all of that extra funding as well, because it might be that you would be eligible for, to be in receipt of funding from additional partners, and that might actually work towards that £75,000 target. So take a look at all of the kind of the explore function on the website, see who's been there and done it before you with that kind of target raise in the sports world, and also have a look at the extra funding partners to see what you might be eligible for in addition to Sport England as well.
Yeah, we certainly don't discourage clubs from looking at additional extra funders as well, particularly with those larger scale projects. So yeah,
perfect, thank you. Okay, one coming in from Nikki. Nikki works seeking grants and funds for a state school. We have two distinctly different projects, one for dance and one for our swimming pool. Can I run two separate crowdfunding campaigns simultaneously, or one after the other? We've kind of touched upon that a little bit in the last question. What you might want to do is kind of combine the two, or running multiple crowdfunders at the same time simultaneously would require a lot of work. I wouldn't necessarily advise doing that unless you have a team of people that can facilitate that. Fiona, you kind of touched upon the amount of work that is involved. If it's a small team or it's just yourself, that I think would not necessarily be the most efficient way of doing it. Whether you wanted to run a crowdfunder for one of those, give enough of a break to allow your supporters and your crowd to kind of, have a breather, and for yourself to regroup and see what worked and what didn't, and then run an additional crowdfunder could work. Alternatively, you could combine the two and just be transparent in your messaging as to what you're raising money for. Maybe an initial target for one of those projects, and then maybe the stretch target would go towards that second element of the project. So maybe the dance classes if you're crowdfunding for the swimming pool initially, or either, to be honest, whichever way around you decided to do it. That would be my advice from a crowdfunding standpoint. Would you add anything from a funding point of view?
Yeah, I'd almost kind of reiterate that. You might find you have more momentum combining the two. In the past we've had kind of a few football clubs or a league coming together, and they decided to kind of combine. I think that was on Active Together, and they actually found it to be far more successful. I just wanted to add as well on the school issue, we definitely can. They are now eligible across both Active Together and Places and Spaces. I'd just be mindful of, particularly with your campaign and our funding as a whole, we would want to see, or we would need to see, the kind of community aspect as well. So the kind of they can't just be curriculum-based facility projects. We need to kind of see that community engagement. So from our point of view, obviously that'll gain the match funding, but also for your campaign success point of view, you'll get far more buy-in, kind of outreaching to your community and kind of gaining more access as well. So yeah.
Perfect. Thank you, Rebecca. We've got a question here just about rewards. Can we cover the cost of rewards, pledges from money raised? So I kind of touched upon this with Fiona a little bit. If it's a reward which is going to cost you to provide, for example, you might decide to have some tote bags or water bottles made with your sports organisation's logo on, for example, that people might want to pledge on as a reward. Absolutely, you can cover the costs of that in the reward itself. It just means that unless you raise that money through the reward pledges, you potentially can't make that happen. So yes, you can cover the cost of it. You just you would just factor that in to actually the price of the reward. So it might, if it costs you £5 to create this water bottle, you might price your reward at 10 or 15, for example. So you're not at a financial loss for creating a reward. That goes kind of against the idea. The whole point of those rewards is to raise the financial gains for you on your crowdfunding campaign, not to put you at a financial loss for providing them.
Yeah, we actually haven't had, very few that I'm aware of clubs, organisations of buying their rewards per se. Like you said, that kind of goes against the kind of idea of the community-based rewards funding. A lot of the time, lots of local businesses and kind of outreach have been very happy to kind of donate in kind, as they would have done on a raffle prize or something like that as well. Even throughout the kind of the strictest of lockdowns, companies have been very happy to donate kind of a voucher discount to clubs, because also it actually raises their profile as well and gains them new.
If you're proactive with your kind of marketing message and you're making sure that you are mentioning these kind of, you know, community organizations or businesses that are backing you within your social media messaging, you will find that the kind of, you know, it's that cross collaboration, isn't it? And actually you might then find that they're talking about how brilliant it was to gift you this rewards, and suddenly your message is going out to their networks as well. So think about how that works mutually beneficially between the two groups of organizations. Okay, this is a question from Nikki. So Fiona has just stated the £7,500 raised was doubled. Earlier info stated that it's up to 10k. So this, in my understanding, would be that obviously if your target was 15,000, 50% of that would have been through the crowd and 50% of that would have been supported by Sport England. So in essence, for every pound the supporters brought to the campaign, £1 would have been matched from Sport England. It's not a live match fund. It's not how it works in its kind of essence, but in your particular instance, it was 50% of the overall target, wasn't it? So it was a double kind of scenario. But you're right, Nikki, it is up to £10,000 per project. But obviously that it's 50% of your total target. So in this instance, £15,000.
I've just seen the question, I think it's from Nikki as well, about if you've got a chunk to invest as an organisation, because we did that. We didn't have a big chunk, but we'd already done a cake sale and a little stall at a skate jam. So again, the young people had raised, I think it was about £230. So we were holding that in cash and then paid it in to the crowdfunder. But you're right, because you put, as long as you've got enough supporters, we were just like we had that daily target. We were also looking at like, have we got enough supporters? Like, make sure, you know, we're all paying in on different cards. But actually, that wasn't an issue. I was worried about that to start off with. But as the momentum grows, you realise that number isn't as scary as the financial number.
I think once you kind of write down, you know, doing your network map, which is really key part of the planning, you soon realise once you've done your friends and family, and then, you know, you're reaching out, you're like, oh, actually, I do know 30 people that I can speak to, or 50, or whatever it might be. One key thing to bear in mind is from a crowdfunding point of view, you can absolutely pledge or donate to your own projects. It's not an issue at all. But please do bear in mind that you will need to have some kind of transparency with that. If you've done a bake sale or you've done a offline event and you've raised money, you can, of course, because it might be cash, pay that into your crowdfunder via the club's bank account. We always recommend that you put a comment and you also put an update to say that that's what you've done and that's what you know, that's where the money has come from. Because obviously, if you're working with extra funding partners, they will need to see some kind of evidence if you are, you know, donating to your own project as an organisation, because that might be helping you to hit those milestones. Just really need to be transparent as to where the money is coming from and what's going on. Would you agree with that, Rebecca?
Yeah, definitely. We don't kind of discourage it because we understand, and also kind of an all-encompassing approach is great as well if you're doing other things. And yeah, Fiona, you're right. A few projects, especially from the get-go, often express concern about those supporter numbers. They're like, oh, how are we going to do that? But ultimately, the reasoning why is as to why we do it is because we don't just want clubs, organisations to just get one big investor. We ultimately want it to be a community or crowd-backed campaign, because ultimately they're the most successful, as we know. And ultimately we want that kind of community engagement for you as a club, and also kind of physical activity as well from our benefit. But like, as you say, as soon as you kind of reach out to all of your members, and if you've successfully created a great page, rewards, then you have absolutely no issues about hitting those kind of supporter numbers.
Just to say, we put a comment on as well, and I kind of felt that we needed to explain where this money had come from. But again, it was also about spreading the good word that this had come from children baking cakes and selling them. So it was like a really another positive social media message to add on. So every little bit helped in that instance.
Yeah,
brilliant.
Great.
Just a question here about more of a kind of the technical side of crowdfunding and links. So just wondering if the crowdfunder link can be embedded into social media accounts, for example, Instagram, which shows how many supporters have donated, as well as the amount you're planning to raise. You do, once you've gone live with your crowdfunding campaign, you do have something we call the live dashboard. And one part of that is the promo. So within that, you will have a QR code that you can download and put on any print. For example, you might have posters or flyers that you're putting out around the community. The other thing that you'll have access to is a widget that you can put onto any kind of website. Other than that, it's my understanding that you wouldn't necessarily be able to integrate into social media. However, obviously you can share the crowdfunding live link in all of your social media messaging. You can have it as a link in your bio on Instagram, for example. But when it comes to kind of constantly monitoring the target raise and supporters, that would be kind of part of your widget that you'd be able to put onto your website.
We just did that old school. We just did a photo of a screenshot of how it was going and then put it on, you know.
I love that. Or just go old school. There's nothing wrong with old school.
No, it works. And we did the link in the bio as well for Instagram, and then realizing that actually if we did it on Facebook, we'd have to do it slightly differently. So again, it's just kind of staying close to it and realizing, because actually our supporters soon told us, you know, oh, you've shared that from Instagram and you said the link's in the bio and it's not here on Facebook. So you quickly fix that if you think you're going to miss out on a donation.
And that's it. It's being reactive, isn't it? You know, it's being on your emails, on your messages, making sure that you're kind of having that communication with supporters and that messaging all the way through. Match funding from Sport England kicks in once the initial 25% is raised. Yes, that's correct. Or does the project need to be approved by Sport England? So you go through an application process. So you would put in an application for the extra funding that you would like to receive. Your application for that, along with your page, will be reviewed by our funding partners. So in this instance, Sport England. At that point, you will receive either you'll be approved. And yes, as soon as you hit 25%, that pledge will be placed onto your page. If you are not approved and actually you've been declined by Sport England, there is lots of support there to actually enable you to make changes to your page and your campaign, as long as you're eligible, in order to kind of revamp that and ask for a re-review to see if you can actually be approved kind of second time round. So there's loads of support, isn't there, Rebecca, from you guys? You've got improvement guys. You want to see people succeed.
Yeah, 100%. We kind of, as soon as you kind of apply to our match fund, and you'll get an email from one of the team attaching kind of referencing all that wraparound support we've touched on, which has been a big focus for us for this fund as a whole. We kind of, as you say, we ultimately really want people to succeed, and we genuinely believe in kind of this way of funding and sustainable funding for sports clubs and organisations. So we certainly want to kind of do everything in our power to help you get there as well.
Amazing, thank you. So we just had a question come in from Jonathan, but we have covered that one about donating onto your own crowdfunder. It's a yes, but you do need to just make sure that you're being transparent and also, you know, putting things in your updates and as comments, just to let people know where that money's come from is really important. So we have run over. I apologise to everybody, pretty much an hour, but I think we've covered quite a lot of really good questions, and it was brilliant to hear your experience as well, Fiona, in so much detail. I think that's going to be really inspirational. I'm just going to quickly put some links here into the chat box. So I've got a link on fees, because there are some fees attached to using Crowdfunder. Help Centre, we've got a brand new knowledge hub, which is full of amazing information and articles on every single step of your crowdfunder. So really useful. We also run drop-ins each week. If you have any questions about crowdfunding, you can book onto one of those via Eventbrite. And obviously we've got more webinars such as this if you want to come back and have a little look about more information about crowdfunding. I will send round an email to everybody that's signed up, and you'll get a replay to today's session along with those links as well. So keep an eye on your inbox. But thank you very much, Fiona and Rebecca, for joining me today. And hopefully for those of you attending, you've had some really good food for thought and you'll be ready to start crowdfunding for your sports organisations.
Yeah, thanks both. Thanks, Fiona.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.